I am Lorna Keene, and if you'd asked me last year what Christmas meant to me, I'd have said heartburn and champagne migraines. It's not that I hate the holidays. I just never liked how they turned me into the backdrop of someone else's family photo. I was always the extra chair, the afterthought, the "she's doing her little design thing, sister," said with a smile so polished it could cut glass. This year, I almost didn't go, but guilt is a manipulative beast when it wears your mother's voice and sounds like, "Don't be dramatic, Lorna, just come home for once and make it easy." So I went. Drove 4 hours from my rented bungalow in Providence, armed with peppermint mochas and the kind of armor only years of emotional invisibility can forge. I parked in the same cracked driveway where my younger sister Harper's new SUV sat like a glinting trophy. I hadn't even stepped out of the car before I heard the familiar creak of the screen door and my dad's voice yelling, "Harper's home." Of course she was. I hadn't rung the bell yet. But before I tell you how a single lottery ticket turned into a war cry, and how my family's reaction exposed decades of buried favoritism, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe. You'll want to see how this ends. Back inside, the house smelled like cinnamon and polished wood. Like someone was trying too hard to bottle joy. The Christmas tree was already up, a towering fake pine draped in red and gold, every ornament personalized, with Harper's name in glitter at least 5 times. Mine was somewhere in the back, probably. Mom emerged from the kitchen holding a tray of spiced nuts. "Oh, Lorna, you made it, we weren't sure." Her smile was tight, her eyes scanning me like she was checking for visible flaws. "You look creative." That was Mom's favorite way of saying underdressed. I adjusted my thrifted cardigan and gave a rehearsed smile. "It's good to see you too." "Harper's upstairs wrapping gifts," Dad said, already half tuned out and back to his usual channel rotation on the living room TV. "She's got something really special planned for tomorrow." Of course she did. Harper always had something planned. My little sister had been the family's crown jewel since birth. She got a pony at 8, a car at 16, and a teaching job right out of college, thanks to a family friend, principal. I got a box of old Prismacolors and a pat on the back for skipping prom to finish a logo pitch. I walked up the stairs past the hall of framed photos, all family moments captured through a Harper-colored lens. First recital, first car, graduation, a collage of her wedding. There was only one photo of me in the mix, my high school senior portrait. No cap and gown, just me in a gray sweater smiling like I had no idea how much I'd be cropped out of the narrative. I stayed in the guest room, the one with the squeaky twin bed and mismatched sheets. It used to be my room once, until Harper took it over during her sophomore year of college and turned it into a walk-in closet. I unpacked my laptop and sketchpad, flipped through the pitch materials for a new rebrand client I was courting, a niche Scandinavian skincare brand that was flirting with a 7-figure design contract. But I couldn't focus. Not here. Not with the muffled sounds of Harper laughing with Mom downstairs, or the squeal of wrapping paper and wine glasses clinking. At dinner, Harper lit up the room like always. Her blonde bob freshly cut, her sweater from some influencer brand, her laugh perfectly timed. She launched into stories about her second graders, about how she was planning a Grinch-Ma's play for the school talent show. "And Lorna?" Mom turned to me midway through the salad course. "Still doing freelance things?" "She has a company now," Harper said, not unkindly, but with the kind of tone people use to talk about someone's Etsy shop. "It's a design studio," I said calmly, for maybe the 50th time. "Ah, well, good for you," Dad muttered, already chewing. "They didn't ask about clients, they never did." I used to think it was because they didn't understand design, but I've come to realize they just didn't want to. Not really. They saw Harper's stability as success. My creativity as a phase. After dinner, I offered to help with dishes. Mom refused. "Harper already loaded the dishwasher, sweetie, just relax." So I did. I went upstairs, poured myself a glass of water, and stared at my laptop. Tomorrow was the annual Keene family holiday dinner, our big event. Everyone would be there. Cousins, uncles, neighbors. It would be hosted at the clubhouse where Harper had her bridal shower. I'd be seated somewhere near the kids' table. Again. But this year, something was different. This year, I wasn't walking in as the overlooked one. I just hadn't told them that yet. I remember the first time I realized I was invisible. It was 7th grade. I just won the state poster competition for an anti-littering campaign. My design, a simple image of a tree crying as wrappers floated down like autumn leaves, was chosen out of nearly 300 entries. I was beaming when I came home, the certificate still warm in my hand. I'd imagined Mom pinning it to the fridge or Dad saying something like, "That's my girl." Instead, I walked into a living room crowded with pink balloons. Harper had made the cheer squad. There was a banner. Cake. My certificate never made it out of my backpack. I wish I could say that was an isolated moment. But it wasn't. There was high school when I got into a competitive summer design program in Boston. I was 15. I'd worked months on that portfolio. The day I told my parents, Harper had just broken up with her boyfriend, Drew, and cried in the kitchen for 2 hours. No one asked me about Boston. I went anyway, on a partial scholarship, took the bus, slept in a twin bed next to a girl named Gwen who snored like a tractor. Still, it was the first time I felt like my talent meant something. But at home, it never translated. Not like Harper's milestones. When Harper failed algebra twice but got a tutor because some kids just need more support, I kept a straight A average for 3 years and never heard the word proud. When I won a small grant to launch a design blog in college, Mom said, "That's cute, maybe you can blog for Harper's class website." Even when I graduated early, Dad didn't come. Said he had work. But I saw the Facebook photos later, he and Mom at Harper's boyfriend's family BBQ that weekend, holding sparklers like it was the 4th of July. They weren't cruel. That's the thing. They weren't monsters, they just couldn't seem to make space for both of us in the spotlight. And somewhere along the way I started shrinking to fit the corners they gave me. I learned to celebrate myself in silence. A new client? Quiet dinner, a successful brand launch, a walk to the bookstore with a latte. I kept my wins like secrets, tiny sacred things I didn't want tarnished by their blank stares or backhanded praise. It wasn't all bad. There were a few who saw me. Aunt Tilda, my mom's half-sister, once pulled me aside after a family reunion. "You've got eyes like your grandfather. He used to draw too. Did you know that?" I didn't. She mailed me one of his old sketchbooks months later. It was the first time I felt like I had a lineage. And there was Jonah, my college roommate turned best friend. A wiry-haired, coffee-breath genius who talked me through every crisis call I ever made at 3 a.m. Jonah saw the fire in me even when I doubted I had a spark left. Still, every holiday dragged me back into that old rhythm. Harper as the sun, me as the eclipse. At her engagement party, I gifted her a custom illustration of her and her fiancé, drawn from a candid photo I'd taken. Harper unwrapped it, blinked once, then turned to her friend and said, "Oh, this is funny. My students do stuff like this in class." Funny. She hung it in the guest bathroom. And when I finally moved to Providence, renting a cheap studio with flaking paint and floors that creaked like shipwrecks, I didn't tell them right away. I waited until I'd booked my first major client, a sustainable fashion brand out of Seattle, and signed the contract. When I did share the news, Dad said, "Wow, that's a long way to go to work on computers." It wasn't just invisibility. It was the assumption that my independence meant I didn't need encouragement, that my being self-reliant excused their absence, that because I could emotionally feed myself, they didn't have to cook. They thought love was a finite resource. And Harper needed it more. I stopped trying to change their minds. I told myself I didn't care, that I liked being the underdog. But I was wrong, because deep down, a small part of me still wanted them to look at me like they looked at her. Not like I was the mistake they didn't have to fix, but like I was their miracle too. My studio started with a $200 thrift store desk, a used MacBook with a flickering screen, and one client, a struggling organic bakery that paid me in gift cards and gratitude. It wasn't glamorous. In fact, for a long time, it was barely sustainable. I lived on oatmeal, designed from sunrise to moonlight, and bartered design work for things like printer ink and groceries. But the work filled me in a way nothing else ever had. It was the first time I could breathe without someone questioning the air I took up. The turning point came during a winter so cold I had to wear 2 pairs of socks inside. A tiny vegan skincare startup in Montreal reached out. They'd seen the branding I did for a local farm stand. the one with the hand-drawn carrot logos and soft peach color scheme. The founder said it made her feel like hugging a bar of soap. She hired me, paid me in full, on time. I cried into my keyboard when I saw the PayPal alert. It was only $1,500, but it was real. That was the day I stopped thinking of myself as a freelancer. I became a designer. From there, it grew, quietly, like moss. One brand referred another. I streamlined my portfolio, learned how to pitch better. I even saved enough to take a UI course, something I'd once thought was out of reach. I called the studio Northline Creative, a name that sounded bigger than it was, until it wasn't, because their silence had taught me something. Validation earned in private is worth more than praise given out of guilt. Still, that didn't mean I wasn't tempted, especially as the holidays crept closer. Especially as Mom texted, "You coming for the annual dinner? Harper's planning something fun." Especially as I bought a new winter coat, not because I needed it, but because I wanted to walk into that dinner looking like a woman who wasn't waiting for a seat at the table. I was the table. The night before the family dinner, I lit 3 candles in my apartment, poured myself a glass of Cabernet, and stared at the blinking cursor in an email draft titled Northline × Fjord, Contract Finalization. The number at the bottom of the agreement made my throat tighten. If I signed, it would be the largest deal of my career, enough to take on a full team, rent the loft studio space I'd bookmarked every month like a secret wish, and pay off the last chunk of my student loans in one transaction. It was surreal. And yet, in that moment, all I could think about was how none of it would matter tomorrow. Not to them. The Keene family dinner wasn't just a meal, it was a performance. We all had parts. Mom played gracious host, Dad grumbled about the turkey being dry regardless of who cooked it, and Harper made everything sparkle. She'd prepare a slideshow or organize a game or pass out name cards with fun facts about each guest. Mine always said something like, "Can draw anything," or "the artsy one," the kind of descriptions you give a pet ferret at a school adoption fair. I'd thought about skipping it this year. I could have blamed work or a client emergency or the flu, but a small, stubborn voice inside me wanted to go. Not to show off. Not really. I just wanted to see what it felt like to walk into that room carrying the truth of my own power, even if I never said it out loud. I closed my laptop without sending the email. Not yet. There was something about leaving it open, unfinished, that felt symbolic. Like keeping a match unstruck. Let them underestimate me one last time. The next morning I got dressed deliberately. A black wool coat, a burnt sienna turtleneck, gold hoops, my hair pulled back tight, clean. I looked unbothered, not festive, not showy, just complete. As I zipped up my boots, Jonah texted, "Jonah, go wreck 'em, Keen." Wrecking not confirmed. Subtle demolition, maybe. Jonah, same difference. I drove through soft snow, music low. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder, sign contract, final draft, and I swiped it away like a secret. The clubhouse sat on a hill like a wedding cake. Inside it smelled like spiced cider and wood polish. The decorations were, of course, Harper's doing. Gold runners, twinkling lights, a Keene family bingo board at every place setting. Mine had already been marked with "brings her own food again." And, still single? The moment I stepped in, I was swarmed by Harper's energy. She air-kissed both my cheeks like we were in a Bravo series. "Lorna, you made it! I wasn't sure you'd be able to squeeze us in with your little, thing." "Studio," I said. "But yeah, still running." "Oh, you are still doing that. That's great," she said, already turning to greet Aunt Diane. I found my seat, far end of the table, next to Cousin Blake, who'd brought a new girlfriend every Christmas for the last 6 years, and never remembered my name. Mom came by and touched my shoulder. "Try the sweet potato. Harper made it with a marshmallow topping this year. Isn't that just fun? Fun." No one asked about Providence, or work, or my life, not even the weather. Dad was deep into a monologue about mortgage rates and how Harper and her husband were doing the smart thing by thinking about a second property. Meanwhile, Harper pulled out her phone to show baby pictures of her friend's kid like it was her own. I smiled, nodded, sipped my water. I was used to this. But I wasn't angry, not anymore. Because something had shifted. I wasn't there to be seen, I was there to watch, to see how the machine worked, the rituals, the hierarchy, and to quietly, gently realize I wasn't a cog in it anymore. I was the engineer of a completely different machine. As the dinner plates were cleared and Harper stood to make a toast about family, blessings, and never forgetting where we come from, my phone buzzed quietly in my pocket. I checked it beneath the table. Subject, Fjord Dimes North Line, fully executed contract body. Congratulations, Lorna. Welcome to the next level. I looked up. Harper was crying. Happy tears, probably. Mom was dabbing her eyes. Dad raised his glass, and I tucked my phone away, smiled softly, and thought, they have no idea what's about to happen. The thing about contempt is, it doesn't always come with a sneer. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in a compliment, tied with a bow of passive interest, and handed to you by people who think they're being generous. That was what the Keene family dinner always felt like being smiled at while someone slowly erased your name off the guest list. As we moved into dessert, the backhanded praise started flowing with the wine. So Lorna, Aunt Diane began, adjusting her scarf like she was about to say something deeply philosophical, are you still doing that artsy tech stuff? I blinked. You mean design? She chuckled. Yes, that, graphic, magic. You know, I always thought you'd go into teaching like Harper. Something stable. Across the table, Harper gave a small, proud shrug, like the subject of her career had been summoned appropriately. She needs structure, Mom chimed in. You always preferred freedom, Lorna. Even as a little girl, you hated rules. I sipped my coffee. No one asked me what I actually did, or how it was going. That part didn't matter. What mattered was that I was still coloring outside the lines, and Harper was getting gold stars for staying inside the margins. Harper leaned in. You know, Lorna, if you ever want help applying to school districts, I could put in a word. They're always looking for creative support staff, bulletin boards and stuff. Bulletin boards? I opened my mouth, then closed it. There was no point explaining what a global brand strategy entailed to people who still thought logos were made in Microsoft Word. I'm good, thanks, I said, smiling like I wasn't chewing glass. Oh, she likes being independent, Mom added. She doesn't need much. I felt that one land like a slap. Not for its tone, but its weight. She doesn't need much. Not food, not affection, not approval, not even presence. Because I'd stopped asking for those things, they'd convinced themselves I never wanted them. I stood up quietly to clear my plate. No one noticed. I stacked dishes in the kitchen, let the water run over the sweet potato crust, and tried to breathe through the static buzzing behind my ears. Jonah once told me contempt has a smell. It's like sour wine and carpet deodorizer, he said. You walk into it and your body knows before your mind does. I was drowning in it. Back at the table, Dad had moved on to one of his signature lectures about financial prudence and how Harper and Ben were building real equity instead of throwing money at hobbies. I didn't ask what he meant by hobbies. He knew exactly what he meant. Then it came, the moment I'd sensed all night but had pretended might pass. Lorna, Mom said as if announcing a group raffle, we wanted to let you know something as a family. My stomach tightened. We've been doing some estate planning, Dad said. Nothing urgent, just future stuff, and we've decided to simplify things. My fork hovered. Harper and Ben are going to take over the family property eventually, Mom continued. It just makes sense. They're local, they have the means, and, well, it keeps things uncomplicated. I set my fork down very gently. And we've moved our trust in that direction too, Dad said. We figured, since you're so self-sufficient, it's only fair. Only fair. The words echoed in my head like gunshots in a marble room. No one looked at me. Not directly. They kept eating. Harper glanced my way briefly and gave a soft, apologetic frown, but she didn't object. She never did. So, Mom concluded, we just wanted you to hear it from us before anything formal goes out. It's not about love, it's just logistics. I swallowed. 1,000 things burned on the tip of my tongue. Childhood sleepovers I wasn't picked up from. Art competitions they forgot to attend. The time I was sick in college and took myself to the ER in an Uber while Harper got surprise visits and care packages. I looked around. No one looked uncomfortable. No one blinked. It had all been decided long before tonight. I was just the final box on their list. Thanks for telling me, I said, and I don't know how I kept my voice steady. That's very efficient. Dad nodded, pleased. Harper passed the cranberry sauce like nothing had happened. I excused myself. I stepped into the hallway, heart pounding, fingers trembling. I pulled out my phone, not to text Jonah, not to cry, but to remind myself what was real. I opened the Fjord email again. Read the words, fully executed contract. And just as I was about to take a deep breath, my phone rang. And that's when everything changed. I stared at the screen. Unknown number. Denmark area code. My first instinct was panic. What if Fjord had changed their minds? What if there was a last-minute snag in the contract? What if I'd imagined it all and the rug was about to be yanked out from under me? But something deeper, a steadiness I hadn't had in years, clicked into place. I answered. Hello? Lorna Keane? The voice asked, crisp, accented, familiar. Yes, speaking. This is Mikkel from Fjord. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. I wanted to be the one to tell you myself. We announced the new partnership this morning. Press release went live 2 hours ago. We tagged your studio's handle on Instagram. My pulse slowed as he spoke, every word like warm rain on sunburn. I'm sorry, I said slowly. Press release? Yes. You're trending. Fast Company, Creative Review, and Designology have already picked it up. The story's making waves. Independent US designer lands multi-continent Fjord rebrand. That's you. I blinked, stunned into silence. Oh, I said, because it was all I could manage. Mikkel chuckled. Congratulations again, Lorna. You earned every pixel of it. We hung up shortly after. He was calling from the airport, about to board a flight to Stockholm. He told me to check my inbox, and social media, and maybe have a drink. I stood in the hallway, phone still in hand, staring at the wallpaper I used to trace with my fingers as a bored teenager, pretending I lived in a different house. Slowly, I opened Instagram. There it was, the Fjord post. We're thrilled to announce our new global branding partner, @northline.creative. Elegant, sustainable, human, just like our vision. My name. Right there, tagged. I clicked the comments. Lorna Keane is a genius. About time an indie studio got this kind of shot. Northline's work is... I scrolled for a full minute, overwhelmed, laughing quietly. Then, from inside the dining room I heard it. My name. Lorna? Harper called out, walking toward me in heels too high for snow. Everything okay? I turned slowly. She stopped short when she saw my face. Not upset, not crying, glowing. Yeah, I said, tucking my phone into my coat. Just got some news. Harper smiled like she was indulging me. Another client? I considered the question. I could have said nothing, let her assume, but something about the warmth in my chest refused to shrink again. Fjord, I said, watching her expression change. They announced the partnership today. I signed with them last night. She blinked. Fjord? The Scandinavian brand? I nodded. That's the one. I'm leading their entire rebrand across North America, Europe, and Asia. It's a 7-figure contract. Her jaw parted slightly like she couldn't decide whether to smile or faint. Oh my God, she said. Lorna, that's huge. It is, I said, calm. She stared at me. I could see it happening in real time. The recalibration. All the years of brushing me aside, reframing me as the artsy outlier, the single one, the low-maintenance one. And now this. Wait, she whispered. Does Mom know? Not yet. Behind her, Mom appeared in the hallway. Everything all right? She asked, her tone clipped. I looked at both of them. Actually, I was just about to tell you something. Mom folded her arms. Can it wait until dessert? No, I said simply. It can't. I stepped back into the dining room and raised my voice just enough to quiet the table. I just got off the phone with the CEO of Fjord, I said. It's a Scandinavian luxury brand. We've been negotiating for months. They announced today that my studio is officially their global branding partner. Silence. The room blinked at me. I run Northline Creative. It's not just freelance stuff. It's a full design firm with international clients. This deal will allow me to expand, hire a team, and start a foundation. I've been building it on my own for 6 years. Cousin Blake muttered, "Holy crap." Aunt Diane dropped her fork. Dad's face froze in a strange hybrid of confusion and denial. Mom finally said, "Well, that's unexpected." "I'm sure it is," I said, voice even. "That's what happens when you don't ask." I let the silence stretch. "I'm not saying this to boast," I added, "but since I was just told I've been removed from the will for being too independent, I thought you deserved to know exactly who you're cutting off." Harper opened her mouth, closed it. I pushed my chair in, picked up my coat. "I won't be staying for dessert." And I walked out. The cold air outside hit me like a baptism. Snowflakes clung to my lashes as I walked toward my car, each breath sharp in my chest. But it wasn't panic. It was release. I didn't rush. I didn't cry. I just moved like someone whose chains had finally fallen quiet. I reached for my keys when I heard the shuffle of boots behind me. "Lorna, wait," Harper's voice. I turned, slowly. She looked flushed, breath fogging in the night, her glittery holiday heels clearly not built for the parking lot. "Look," she started, "I didn't know they were doing that, the trust thing." I raised an eyebrow. "Didn't you?" Her mouth opened, closed. "It wasn't my decision," she said, softer this time. "They told me last week, said you wouldn't care, that you were off doing your own thing and didn't need help." "Ah," I nodded. "So that's the story now. Independence means unlovable." Harper winced. "That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is being told I'm family until money's involved. What's not fair is being invisible for 30 years and then hearing, 'You'll be fine,' used as a reason to cut me out of my own legacy." She said nothing. I let the silence stretch. "You know," I continued, "I used to think the worst part was being overlooked. But it's not. The worst part is realizing they didn't just forget me. They counted on me to not need them. They built the whole house on the idea that I wouldn't notice I was living outside." Harper shifted her weight, hugging herself. "I didn't mean to make you feel that way." "That's the thing," I said. "You didn't make me feel anything, you just benefited." She opened her mouth again, but I raised my hand. "I'm not looking for an apology. I'm not even angry. I just finally see it for what it is." She looked down at the snow. "Will you at least come back in, for the toast or something?" "No," I said gently. "I've had enough of performative toasts." I got in the car. She stood there for a second, then turned and walked back toward the building, her figure getting swallowed by the twinkling lights behind frosted windows. Inside, I imagined the murmurs starting, the family PR machine rebooting itself, Harper spinning the story, Dad frowning, Mom sipping wine and saying something like, "Well, that's Lorna for you," always a bit dramatic. They could have it. They could keep their buffet trays and bingo cards and shallow definitions of success, because I had something they couldn't fake. I had truth, and I had earned it one all-nighter, one ignored phone call, one quiet victory at a time. As I pulled out of the lot, my phone buzzed. Jonah again. "Jonah, how'd it go?" I voice texted back, "Thermonuclear, I'll call you when I get home." He replied instantly, "I hope you walked out like a queen in slow motion." I smiled. "Even better," I whispered to myself. When I got home, the email from Mikkel was waiting in my inbox, along with dozens of new DMs and requests. I glanced through the subject lines. Press interest, potential collabs, even a keynote inquiry. But I didn't answer any of them right away. Instead, I made tea. I changed into sweatpants. I sat on the floor of my apartment and stared at the candle still burning from the night before. This time, I didn't think about what they would say. I didn't think about what they'd missed. I just thought, I was never the problem. I was the proof. The next morning, I woke up to a buzzing phone and a full inbox. Apparently, Harper had wasted no time. By sunrise, I had 3 missed calls from Mom, 2 from Dad, with 1 text from a cousin I barely spoke to that just said, "Proud of you, girl." That took guts. And an Instagram DM from Harper herself. "Can we talk today? I feel like last night got intense." Intense, sure, like years of quiet dismissal, polished over with matching Christmas pajamas and choreographed family photos, could be boiled down to one word. I ignored it for now. Instead, I rolled over, wrapped myself in my fleece blanket, and let the light of my phone screen show me something real. @northline.creative had gone up 3,000 followers overnight. Fjord had posted 2 more promotional slides, featuring design mock-ups I'd submitted during the pitch. Comments were pouring in. DMs too, some from past clients, some from strangers thanking me for proving indie creatives could go global without selling out. It felt strange, liberating, but not euphoric. Not like a party. More like coming up for air after swimming under too long and realizing you don't need to gasp. I made coffee. I opened my laptop and reread the contract, just to remember, it was mine. Every line, every clause, no one could take it, not because they'd chosen not to, but because they never had the power to begin with. By noon, Mom called again. This time, I picked up. "Hi, Lorna." Her voice was tight, clipped. "I was hoping we could speak about last night." "Okay. You blindsided us," she said, dropping something like that during dinner. That was theatrical. "I was being honest," I said calmly, for the first time in a very long time. You didn't need to embarrass everyone. I exhaled slowly. Did I embarrass you? Or did I just remove the illusion? She went quiet. You always said I didn't need much, I continued. But maybe you just hoped I'd never need you. That way you could love Harper more openly without having to feel guilty. That's not true, she whispered. It doesn't matter anymore, I said. I'm not angry. I'm just done pretending that being strong means I should go without. Another silence. And then, your father and I, we never wanted you to feel excluded. We just thought you liked doing things your own way. I do, I said, but that doesn't mean I liked being left out of the family I was born into. We didn't mean to hurt you. You did. She didn't argue, just breathed on the other end like the wind had been knocked out of her. We'd like to meet, she said. Just us. No Harper, no dinner, just to talk. I'll think about it, I said. And I meant it. I didn't hang up in anger. I didn't slam the phone down like I once might have. I just let the call end and returned to what mattered. That afternoon, I met Jonah at our favorite cafe. He brought me a lemon tart and a magazine clipping. Fast Company had printed a piece titled, From Margins to Mainstream, The Quiet Rise of Lorna Keane. He pushed it across the table. Told you. Thermonuclear. I laughed for the first time in days. We talked about the studio expansion, hiring plans, maybe even a second office in Montreal. For the first time, the conversation didn't feel like dreaming. It felt like architecture. Around sunset, I walked back home, past twinkling town square lights and store windows filled with red velvet bows. And that's when I realized something. I hadn't just walked out of that dinner. I'd stepped into the life I'd built for myself, brick by brick, in silence, waiting for no one. Let them scramble. Let them twist the narrative and revise the dinner table legend. I had nothing to prove anymore. The family I was born into chose comfort over truth. The one I'd built, me, Jonah, my team, my work, chose me. That weekend, I hosted a small dinner at my apartment. Just 4 of us, Jonah, my assistant Emery, my freelance copywriter Bex, and me. No matching outfits, no bingo cards, no parental monologues about tax brackets. We sat around my scratched-up dining table, eating lentil stew and rosemary bread, passing around a bottle of affordable but surprisingly good red wine. Jonah brought candles. Bex baked something that fell apart on the plate but tasted like brown sugar and buttered prayers. There was no agenda, no performance, just warmth. Emery had brought her dog, a little white puffball named Tadpole, who sat curled under the table like a secret. At one point, we all went around and shared our smallest, biggest wins of the week. Not the loud triumphs, the quiet ones. I said no to a client who made me feel small, Emery said. I took a full day off without checking email, Bex added. Jonah raised his hand. I deleted LinkedIn. We laughed until we couldn't breathe. When it was my turn, I paused. I walked out of a room, I said softly. A room that tried to tell me my worth was negotiable. Everyone went still for a second, then Jonah lifted his glass. To rooms we leave, he said. We clinked. It wasn't until later, when the dishes were done and the wine was gone and the playlist had rolled into low acoustic guitar, that I felt it. Something like alignment. Not happiness exactly, but rightness. I watched them laugh over an inside joke and thought, this is what chosen family feels like. No obligation, no quiet war for attention, no scoring systems or guilt or emotional sleight of hand, just people who saw me, who asked questions because they wanted to, who didn't assume I was fine just because I didn't cry at the table. That night, after everyone left, I curled up on the couch with Tadpole still asleep at my. I opened Instagram again. Harper had posted a photo. Her and Ben, in matching flannel pajamas by the Christmas tree, captioned, "Grateful for the only people who really get me." I didn't flinch, didn't even scoff, because for the first time, I didn't feel the need to defend myself against someone else's version of the truth. Let her have it. Let them all have the glossy holiday they needed to pretend things were whole. I didn't need the illusion. I had the real thing. Jonah texted again. Tadpole says he's staying. Me, I can't afford his rider. He demands duck confit. Ugh, he gets that from me. I smiled as the phone dimmed, and my apartment fell into a kind of quiet I used to hate, but now found strangely holy. Because that silence wasn't absence anymore. It was peace. Chosen peace. Boundaries aren't built in anger. That was the hardest lesson to learn. When you grow up equating silence with safety and self-reliance with love, setting boundaries can feel like betrayal. like you're the one slamming the door, like you're the one cutting people out. But I wasn't slamming anything. I was just finally closing what had been open far too long. The first real step was changing my number, not completely, just enough. I kept my business line for clients, but moved all personal calls to a new SIM. Only 5 people had the new number: Jonah, Emery, Bex, Aunt Tilda, and the accountant who handled my contracts. I sent a brief email to my parents, short and surgical. Hi Mom and Dad. For the foreseeable future, I'll be focusing on work and will need some space. I appreciate you understanding my need for distance, Lorna. No sign-off, no emojis, no softness added just to ease their discomfort. It felt brutal. It also felt correct. I wasn't cutting them off out of spite. I was just done living on hope alone. Hope that they'd someday recognize what I brought to the table. Hope that they'd stop mistaking resilience for excess. Hope that if I kept proving my worth, eventually they'd mirror it back. I had spent decades offering them chances to join me. They passed every time. So I stopped offering. Instead, I poured that energy into my new life. I hired Emery full-time. Started scouting a studio space in a converted mill building with huge windows and cement floors that echoed like a cathedral. I got a lawyer. Not because anyone had threatened me, but because I knew now what legacy meant. And I wasn't going to let mine be managed by anyone who once thought I didn't need things like security, recognition, or love. I updated my will, named Jonah as executor. Set aside funds for a scholarship in Aunt Tilda's name for underrepresented design students who needed someone to believe in them early. And quietly, without fanfare, I removed my family's last name from the public branding of Northline. It was still legally mine. But in the About section, I rewrote the tagline. Northline Creative is led by founder Lorna Keene, whose work has redefined warmth and clarity in modern brand identity. We believe in silent builders, creative grit, and people who craft futures from the edges. That sentence took me 2 hours. I cried when I wrote it. Not because I was sad, but because for the first time in my life, I felt held. By my own words. By my own truth. I stopped answering questions about my personal life in interviews. Stopped giving permission to be interpreted. If people asked about my family, I'd say, I learned early how to move alone. That shaped me. Nothing more. I wasn't interested in painting villains. I was interested in building rooms where no one had to shrink. I kept the birthday card Harper mailed me in January. It was generic, just a gold-foiled, "You're amazing" on the front, signed in her big, round handwriting, "Hope this year is yours. Love you." I didn't reply. Not out of pettiness, but because sometimes you can love people best by refusing to let them keep hurting you. That's the part no one talks about. Forgiveness doesn't always end in reunion. Sometimes it ends in freedom. And that's enough. Legacy is a funny thing. For so long, I thought it was something inherited, handed down in envelopes, in property lines, in monogrammed silverware, and thick folders with family trust paperwork. But legacy isn't what you're given. It's what you leave behind. And I was ready to make mine mean something. It started with the foundation. Northline Futures. I launched it quietly, with no press release, no ribbon cutting, no awkward photo ops. Just a page on my website, a modest seed fund from my Fjord earnings, and one clear mission: to support underrepresented young creatives in finding their voice and being paid for it. I created a grant for first-year design students who didn't have the luxury of unpaid internships. Funded a mentorship program with designers from across the globe. Set up a quarterly stipend for laptops and tablets, because no one should be locked out of creativity for lack of equipment. And I named the first scholarship after Aunt Tilda. She cried when I told her. Sent me a ceramic mug she made in a pottery class years ago. It was misshapen and somehow perfect. "This is the only cup I ever want to drink coffee from again," I texted her with a photo. "You better," she replied, "or I'll haunt you." Every piece of the foundation was a thread I'd been collecting in secret for years. Clients who once paid me in bread, mentors who sent me PDFs instead of lectures, friends who edited my decks at midnight. None of them had the Keene name, but they all belonged to the life I chose. And yet, I couldn't pretend it didn't sting. The idea that my actual family would never see this. Or worse, see it and believe it was just some artsy side gig in a long line of distractions. But then something strange happened. One day, out of nowhere, a letter arrived. A real one. Handwritten. on thick cream stationery. From my father. Lorna, I've never been good with words, and I imagine this is too little too late, but I saw your name in designology, and I want to say, you built something extraordinary. You should be proud. I didn't know how to be your dad. I saw your strength and thought it meant you didn't need anything. I think I told myself that because it made my own lack of effort feel less like failure. I'm sorry. Love, Dad. I didn't know what to do with it. I read it 3 times, then I put it in the same drawer as Harper's card. Not as a keepsake, not as a grudge, just acknowledgement. You can't rewrite the story, but you can underline the truth. Later that month, I got invited to speak at a design conference in San Francisco. I almost said no. But then I remembered 15-year-old me, riding a megabus with nothing but a sketchbook and a half-dead phone, praying that someone, anyone, would notice what she could do. I went. My talk was titled Creating Without Permission. I told the audience about failure, about silence, about how being overlooked is not the same as being unworthy. And when it ended, a girl with bright green glasses came up to me and said, "My parents think art is useless, but I think I just found proof that they're wrong." I smiled at her. "You didn't need proof," I said. "You needed permission to stop waiting for theirs." She nodded, eyes wide and watery. As she walked away, I thought, maybe this is it. Not the awards, not the contracts, not even the foundation, but the moment someone else finds their voice because you chose to use yours. That's legacy, not in stone, in ripple. It hit me one evening, not with a bang but with a whisper. I was walking home from the studio, a real studio now, with a tall window and a sign that said Northline Creative in matte black vinyl. The city was quiet, the sky dusky blue, and the sidewalks shimmered with a recent rain. I had no meetings, no calls, no performance to maintain, and I felt full, not triumphant, not euphoric, just whole. Years ago, I would have filled a moment like this with noise, a podcast, a to-do list, some mental argument with a version of my mother that only existed in my head. But not now. Now I let the silence walk beside me like an old friend. I passed a bookstore and noticed one of my branding projects in the window, Fjord's North American product line, rewrapped in sleek minimal packaging that had started as a pencil sketch in my notebook. I smiled. Not because it meant I'd made it, but because it meant I no longer needed anyone to say it. When I got home, I poured tea into Aunt Tilda's misshapen mug and watched the steam rise like it had something to say. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who showed up to family dinners with her heart in a sketch pad, hoping someone would ask to see it. The one who laughed too loudly at Harper's stories because silence felt like abandonment. The one who spent so much energy trying not to be a burden, she became a ghost. She wasn't gone. She was just finally seen, by me. That was the difference. I didn't need a new family. I didn't need an apology tour. I didn't need revenge or revision or to reclaim some seat at their table. I built my own, and I said it for people who never asked me to shrink. I still get texts from Harper, usually links, sometimes a heart emoji, sometimes a memory from 10 years ago she thinks I might have forgotten. I don't reply, not because I'm angry, but because I'm at peace. And peace doesn't require conversation, just clarity. My name is Lorna Keene. I'm a graphic designer, a founder, a builder, a daughter, yes, but also my own person. And that is more than enough. Have you ever been told that because you're strong you don't need love? That because you're independent you're unworthy of support? Yeah, me too. So I want to ask you something. Who gets to define what you're worth? Your family? Your title? The size of your dinner plate on holidays? Or is it you? If you've ever felt like the invisible one, the one who clapped for others while no one clapped for you, drop a comment and tell me your story. You're not alone. Not even close. And if this journey, my journey, resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to outgrow your origin story, that it's not betrayal to choose peace over proximity, that healing doesn't always come in the form of a hug. Sometimes it comes in the form of a boundary. We are allowed to create joy without permission. We are allowed to walk away from legacy if it was built on exclusion. We are allowed to belong to ourselves first. You don't need a seat at their table to build a feast of your own. So here's to the silent builders, the overlooked, the fiercely soft-hearted. We see you now, and we're louder than ever.